In Virginia, guess what? Another retreat, a final retreat for Robert E. Lee after decades of fights and legal wranglings and protest. Guess what? That massive statue of that white domestic traitor, that white supremacist, the man who fought to keep slavery going, Robert E. Lee, it is no longer up in the capital of Virginia. It was removed today, taken down after the Virginia Supreme Court ruled that the governor did have the authority. The Richmond City Council could indeed move it out. And I must say, what a nice, rich sight, Jeff, to see that white supremacists losing again, taken away, and removed from that large pedestal there in Richmond, Virginia. Here in Tennessee, same thing happened with Nathan Bedford Forrest bust in the state capitol. It's time for all of these white traitors, these white terrorists, to lose their lofty status places in this country, Jeff.
Yeah, indeed, man. I will add to the conversation, to your tribute, as we see this, the Wakanda Forever T'Challa mud salute, as that hits the ground and hopefully turns over in some space where we may never see it again. Here in Nashville, Tennessee, at the state capitol, literally just down the street from where you are at Fisk University recently, the bust of Nathan Bedford Forrest, one of the early figures in the Ku Klux Klan, one of the persons who put together the Fort Pillow massacre, where he lined black soldiers up in the ground and shot them, exterminated them, took their lives. That bust of him was removed. It's been there for 30 years. It has been a symbol that white supremacists in this state have rallied around. It has been a symbol of honor and a symbol of pride. It's interesting that the governor of Virginia noted that, and I quote, "The public monuments reflect the story we choose to tell about who we are as a people." When it comes to monuments, particularly here in my home city of Nashville, Tennessee, I reflect on the bust of Nathan Bedford Forrest, and I think about all the protests that came about as a result of this bust. And I find myself in the middle, because with that bust, it was very clear that the last 25 years of Republican gerrymandering and creating a state that, while it is really a moderate state, is now in an electoral space overwhelmingly red. Nashville is an island of blue. Memphis is an island of blue in a state that is now controlled overwhelmingly by the Republicans. That bust was a symbol of white supremacy. It was rallied around. What concerns me now, though, is that with all of the celebrations around the monuments coming down, are we also not making sure that we focus on getting policy in place? When we look at the bust of Nathan Bedford Forrest and all of the protests and all of the arrests that took place, the policies have not changed, not yet. What policies do we now have in Nashville, Tennessee, and the state of Tennessee since the protests began? Well, now it's illegal to camp on the state grounds where the legislature is. And if you camp there, you can be arrested. You can get a felony that can then strip you of the right to vote. Now, since the protests have been taking place, we passed, or can I say they've passed, legislation that makes open carry without a permit law. We've also passed a policy that now makes it so that if someone is protesting and walking in the street and you hit them, you will not be charged with murder. So the bust has disappeared. We now have the outward symbol that is no longer here, and yet the policies have dug in deeper. I think with these celebrations, it's time for us to now move into a space where we focus on the statues coming down as a result of the policies being significantly changed. Even in Nashville, we celebrate that he has moved the bust, but the bust didn't go away here. I don't know what they're going to do with the statue there in Virginia, but here in Nashville, the bust has moved from the state capitol, where it had about 100,000 visitors a year, to the new State Museum in a special new exhibit where it has over 220,000 visitors a year. That puts it in perspective for us. So policy first, then the symbols coming down as a representation of success in policy. That's the ideal that I think we should be working toward.
I'll tell you what, Amisha, it has been quite hilarious to watch all these people whining and crying, leaving these voicemails, how, oh, this is unfair. They're taking our white history. Look, we know you have folks who have these white supremacist feelings. Oh, but this is not the case. Bottom line is, every single Confederate monument that is up in this country, whether it is a statue, a bust, a painting, a plaque, all must come down. Fine, stick them in museums, but there should be no places of honor or glory for any of these white domestic terrorists.
Absolutely agreed. I think that, well, first and foremost, we are the only country that erects, symbolizes, and gets excited, at least our white America does, about these symbols of terror, these symbols of basically trying to dismantle our democracy, these symbols of trying to rip the nation in two. In other nations, what we see is when that type of behavior happens, you take those things down. There is no importance, there's no viability, there is no structure around continuing to hoist and in admiration these types of figures. And I agree with what Dr. Carr, number two, actually, I don't know whether you're number two or number one, but what Dr. Carr said a minute ago, because I do think that we have to, before jumping the gun and getting too excited, jubilant, and dancing in the streets, recognize that even though these monuments are coming down, and it's been a long time coming, the attitudes, the policies, the structures around them that have inherently created a hotbed for structural racism to continue to not only supplant but grow across this country are very much alive and well. If we take down Nathan Bedford Forrest, if we take down Robert E. Lee, if we take down every single one of these across the country, we're still seeing these very strategic, very aligned and hateful policies that still keep Black people behind. So on the one hand, I'm excited as well that we're seeing these ignorant things that have been erected for years finally come down. But on the other, I'm also really frustrated and agitated that Black people continue to be treated as second-class citizens, and we're watching time after time more and more laws and policies get passed, particularly at the state level, that thwart the progress of Black people across this country. So I think that this comes at a somewhat of a bittersweet tone, because it seems like the more these statues come down, the greater push we see of angry white people who are honestly getting their way when it comes to telling Black people what they have for generations. Get back, stay Black, know your place.
And let's be clear, Scott, there's only one party that is full-throated defending these white Confederate symbols, these white domestic terrorist symbols, the Republican Party.
Well, that's true. They're nothing but racists and Republicans in the GOP, and then there's Donald Trump. But, Roland, the next phase of all of this, because I agree with your colleagues, and I've said this before, is that America is going to continue to have the race question and continue to have the race issue permeate its society, negative for Black people, not so negative for white people, until we have a race reconciliation dialogue about slavery. We've moved on from slavery. We moved on from the civil rights movement and Jim Crow, but had no resolution with our white brothers and sisters about it. They don't want to talk about it anymore. And many Black people are afraid to engage in that discussion because they're embarrassed. But we've got to have those discussions, because otherwise we just keep putting a Band-Aid on it, and it's really not going away. Even when we become the majority in this country in 2043 or 2045, the race issue will still be a problem. That's what the big GOP fight and white people believing their white history is being taken from them. This issue of white privilege that they did not earn, but they believe by racial reckoning they're losing something by giving up their white privilege. This needs to be resolved, and we're only going to resolve it through race reconciliation discussions with all of us in this country. You have to be fearless about it. These are difficult discussions, but our leadership in this country, Black, white, Democrat, Republican, are terrified of having it. But it's the only thing, at least the first big step, to race reconciliation and resolution in this country. But we don't have the courage to have it, so we will continue to struggle with it.
Folks, back to our Roland Mark Unfiltered video in just one moment. All right, folks, CEEK.com is a black-owned company founded by Mary Spiel. It's a virtual reality company where you can actually go there, look at their virtual reality content. A couple of devices they actually have for sale that you might be interested in. First off, their VR headset allows for you to slide your phone right in and experience that virtual reality content on their site or watch a 360-degree video. Also, there are 360-degree headphones, tremendous bass, used for gaming, Bluetooth, phone calls, you name it. Folks, you can get these two at CEEK.com using this promo code RMVIP21, RMVIP21. You buy one or the other, or even both. A portion of the proceeds come back to us here at Roland Martin Unfiltered. And so we want you to check out CEEK.com and give it a try.